Hello and welcome back. We are in CIT-05-L1 environment, SEAM introduction, where we will configure pfSense. Okay, so this lab, the objective is to learn how to create a firewall. We're going to set up an environment with a router and practice some VM configuration. This lab should take about 20 to 30 minutes, and we just need to have a basic understanding of Linux and basic knowledge of pfSense. What do you need? You need VirtualBox, which we have here. We need pfSense, and we have, excuse me, and we have the extra lab files, pfSense CE-02-L1 release. Now, when I go into the ISO files library, we have a slightly different version. We have pfSense CE-02-L4.4. I'll show you how to address that later on in the lab. And of course, you have your security measures in the textbook references. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to get rid of my browser and bring in VirtualBox, and we're at step 1 where we need open VirtualBox and click New. So we go ahead and click New, and in this case here we're going to type pfSense, and it's a BSD, and it's free BSD, and we're going to take the 64-bit version. So my screen looks the same here. Once again, I'm on a Mac, so I have a very slight variance. For example, it says next on the lab file, or my screen here, it says continue, but no big deal. I click continue. I'm going to take the default of 1 gig of RAM, click next. I'm going to go ahead and create a virtual hard disk now. In step 5, select hard disk, type VDI, and next. I have that selected. And in terms of size, I want it dynamically allocated. I click next. I'll take the default path. It's going to put it into my default folder here. It wants 16 gigs of space. I'll create. And now I have my first part of the lab set up, which is pfSense is powered off. And now let's go to settings. And in settings, we're going to the network section, and we're going to select the bridge adapter. Awesome. That's page 8. In step 10, we're going to adapter 2. I'm going to enable that adapter. I'm going to make it an internal network, and we're going to type that as Vulnerable Corp Network. That's page 9, step 10. And then in the advanced section, as I click this out and expand it, I want to allow all the VMs, and the cable is connected. Click OK. And in this point here, slightly different because I am on a Mac. I'm going to back into settings, and in storage, I'm going to pick up the ISO file. So in this portion here, I go to storage, I pick empty, I click on create, choose or create a virtual optical disk, and my screen looks very similar to the screen that you see here, add. I click add, and I go into my downloads folder, and in my downloads folder I have the pfSense 2.4.4 release that we downloaded from the course Canvas site. I click OK, I have it here. Similar process that you see here. We navigated it to the folder. Click OK. And at this point, I can start the VM. And then when it asks me to pick up that ISO file, I pick it up from the pick list. I have pfSense 2.4.4. I know it says 2.4.5 here. We're going to address that. I click start. And my screen should look similar to what you see here. Now this will just take a moment as it goes through the boot up and install process. Just make this a little bit bigger and get my virtual box manager out of the way. And then my screen looks similar to this one here, step 17. When I see the copyright and distribution notice, press enter. Just hitting accept. Of course, the VM has to be selected. I have the option to install pfSense. I click OK. I take the default in step 19, continue with the default key map. Click select. I'm going with the guided disk setup in step 20. Click OK. In terms of manual configuration, I'm prompted for a manual configuration. I say no. And then at this point here, I want to make sure that we have ejected the ISO file. So I'm going to go back to my VM. And in this case here, I'm going back to devices. So we have the VM running. I'm going to storage. And then in this section here, I'm going to remove disk from virtual drive. That's essentially getting rid of the install, so that way the installation disk, so that way when we reboot, it doesn't go through this process again. And then I click on reboot as it says. And then we'll wait for it to come on the other side. Now, if you run into any troubles here, I can just do a hard reset from the VM side of things. And at this point, we're making sure that the adapters are configured correctly. And now we are in the pfSense network configuration after this fully boots up. And let's just give that a second to catch up. Okay, so now we see that the boot up is complete. We have a WAN interface set up, and we have a LAN interface that we need to set up. So let's take a look at this. So at this point here, you see the WAN interface. So we're going to identify the WAN and LAN address of pfSense. We're in step 1, and it looks similar to this screen here. So let's go down into step 2, which is type 2, and press enter. In type 2, we're going to set the interface IP addresses. So 2 on my keyboard. And in this case here, it says on step 3, press enter and select LAN interface. And we're going to configure the LAN interface number 2. So let's go ahead and make sure that the VM is selected. I select 2, I hit enter. I am now in step 4, and it says type the IP address, the IPv4 address of my LAN interface. So it's 10.0.0.1. And in this case here, we have to put the subnet mask. It's a /24. And I'm on page 20, step 5. And I hit enter. And let's just see what that looks like from an instructions perspective. I dip down to step 6. It says for the upstream gateway address, press enter when the field is empty. While the field is empty, so we're empty here. I'm going to hit enter. And then for the IPv6 address, we're not going to worry about that right now. We're going to click enter. Then I'm prompted to configure a DHCP server on the pfSense box, so that way we can dole IP addresses to hosts on the 10 network. So in this section here, we're going to say yes. I click on yes. I am now on step 9 on page 22, and I have to assign the DHCP IP range. So it's 10.0.0.2 is going to be the first IP address of that range, and the upper limit is the 10.0.0.20. So we now have our DHCP scope. So we're on page 22, step 10. I hit enter. It asks me, do I want to revert to the web configurator protocol? I type N for no in the VM. And then we wait for the DHCP server to continue. I am no longer prompted with any questions. If you do get the web configuration, you can just type N at this point here. I'm going to hit continue, and then I am back in the pfSense default screen, and then I take a look at my IP addresses, and I see my bridge adapter is configured for DHCP4, which is great. This is an DHCP assigned IP address. And then for the LAN, this is a static IP that we put in. And then we want to make sure that we can reach the outside world. So on step 12, I'm instructed to type in 7 to ping a host. And then I'm going to ping the 8.8.8 network. And I see I have some good ping replies, which is perfect. Hit enter to continue. I'm back to my screen and also at the end of this lab. Hope you enjoyed that. See you at the next one.